Let me tell you what I do. I draw my material from the greatest masters who ever lived on earth. They intimately understood the human predicament, and they came up with solutions which have been tested over millennia. And what I have done is I've taken their teachings, stripped them of religious, cultural, and other connotations, and adapted them so that they're acceptable to intelligent people in a post-industrial society. I want to lay some of the building blocks upon which my entire concepts are based. And the first of these is something called mental chatter. And mental chatter is an internal monologue that you have going on in your head all the time. It begins when you get up in the morning, is with you right through the day, is with you right now when you should be listening to my chatter instead of your chatter. Boy, this guy is making some outlandish promises. He must be a new age freak. However did Inc. put him on the main stage? I bet he makes a living selling the Brooklyn Bridge to gullible tourists. Recognize that? That's mental chatter. You've always had it. Sometimes it's so strong it prevents you from sleeping at night. So what do you do with your mental chatter? You ignore it, you suppress it, you live your life as best you can. It's as if you had an unwelcome relative show up at your home and you can't kick him out. So you live your life in spite of your mental chatter. Big mistake. And the reason it's a big mistake is because you create your life with your mental chatter. You think you live in a real world, you don't. You live in a construct, and that construct is created with your mental chatter. The next concept is something called a mental model, and a mental model is a notion you have that this is the way the world works. And you've got dozens of models. You've got a model for how do you grow your business, how do you hire employees, how do you pick a restaurant to eat at or a movie to go to, dozens of models. Some of these models may or may not be in conflict with each other, and you may or may not be aware of that. The problem is not that you have models. The problem is that you do not recognize you have models. You think this is the way the world is. But this is not the way the world is. This is your model of this is the way the world is. And the more you believe in your model, the more it seems as if you're getting evidence that this is the way the world is. And very soon you build a silo around yourself that's almost impossible to break out of. So that's pretty abstract. So let me see if I can make it concrete. And once again, I'd like you to put yourself into a situation that I'm going to outline to you. Don't listen to me, put yourself into the situation. So you're going to an important meeting, and you're running late, and you're driving. Got that? Important meeting, driving, running late. You are stuck in a traffic jam, not just a run-of-the-mill traffic jam, but the mother of all traffic jams. Okay? It's a beautiful Arizona summer, and the thermometer has climbed to 105 degrees, and the air conditioning in your car has courteously broken down. You with me? Going to an important meeting, running late, driving, massive traffic jam, really hot day, no air conditioning. Are you there with me? Okay. Now, all of a sudden, a car cuts in front of you and almost causes an accident. Then he cuts in front of another car in front of you and almost causes another accident. What are your feelings towards the driver of that car? Would it be fair to say that loving kindness is not it? The driver of this car that cut you off so rudely had received some terrible news. His son was involved in a very serious accident, and he's trying desperately to get to the hospital and has no knowledge of whether or not he's ever going to see his son alive again. So what happens when I share that information with you? Can you physically feel your rage and frustration drain out of you to be replaced with compassion for a fellow human being in an unfortunate predicament? Yes? Can see a lot of heads nodding. Now, you don't really know whether the person who cut you off was a distraught father or an inconsiderate jerk. Now that I have raised the possibility, it's possible, just possible, that you could say, well, what I'm really going to do is I'm going to hire a private investigator to look into the matter and report back to me. And if the private investigator reports back to me that he was a distraught father, I will feel deep compassion. But if the private investigator reports back to me that he was an inconsiderate jerk, I will be really pissed off. But until I know for sure, I'm going to be neutral. It's possible you could take that approach, but somehow I doubt it. Right? I don't believe anybody here would hire a private investigator to look into the matter. So that leaves us with the dilemma that we don't really know whether the person who cut us off was an inconsiderate jerk or a distraught father. But the deeper point is, it really doesn't matter. You have the choice of determining which is the emotional domain you are going to occupy. You had a choice, and you made the choice. And until I explicitly pointed it out to you right now, you probably did not recognize that you had a choice and you made that choice. And this is important because you face such a juncture in your life dozens of times every day. Let me repeat that. You face such a juncture in your life dozens of times every day. And in the vast majority of those instances, you choose to occupy an emotional domain which leaves you angry, frustrated, depressed, dejected, and you don't even recognize that you have done that. And the reason that you do that is because of the mental chatter that you entertain and the mental models that you hold. That's how important these concepts are. In fact, I will go further. Every time you have a situation in your life that you find unpleasant, you are using one or more mental models that are not serving you well. And the moment you learn to make changes in those mental models, that situation will dissolve and leave you. A third building block for my programs is something called the me-centered universe. Remember Galileo? He got into a spot of trouble a few hundred years ago because he kind of postulated that perhaps the sun does not move around the earth, perhaps the earth moves around the sun. Well, all of you are convinced that Galileo got it wrong. The earth does not move around the sun, it revolves around you personally. And I'm not entirely joking when I say that. Think about how, no matter what happens, how quickly you bring it down to what's the impact on me. You know, your spouse gets a great job offer and you think, how is this going to affect our relationship? Your boss leaves the company and you say, who's going to be the new person and what's my relationship going to be with him or her? Or am I going to get promoted or is there that turkey down the hall? Your daughter drops out of high school to begin an in-depth exploration of controlled substances. And you say, what will they think about my parenting? Think about how no matter what happens, you very quickly bring it down to what's the impact on me. And the point is, if you primarily live in a me-centered universe, you are going to live, by and large, a mediocre life, punctuated by flashes of pleasure, but essentially mediocre and unfulfilled. It comes with the territory. The only way you're going to be able to break out of that into the vision that I painted for you earlier is if you can become a part of a cause which is much bigger than you are, a cause which brings a greater good to a greater community, and you have tremendous flexibility in defining both the greater good and the greater community. But unless you find something like that in your life, you are going to live a mediocre existence. Most persons believe that success comes step by step, that there is this ladder of success and you ascend it rung by rung. And I'm here to suggest that that's not so. You can leapfrog several rungs and reach an entirely higher level of accomplishment. And you can do it again, and you can do it again. I have a vision for you. And the vision I have is when you get up in the morning, your blood is singing at the thought of being who you are and doing what you do. that as you go through the day, you're radiantly alive. You could sink to your knees in involuntary gratitude of the tremendous good fortune that has been bestowed on you. And I'd like to suggest that if your life isn't like that, then you're wasting your life. And what I'm sharing with you is not a pipe dream. I'm not Pollyanna speaking. It is possible. And not only is it possible, but it's possible for you. And what I'm going to share with you are tested, proven principles by which you can begin that journey. Before I start, I'd like you to put yourself into a situation that I'm going to outline to you. Don't just listen to me. Put yourself into that situation. You're in love. You're madly in love. There's a rainbow on every corner, sometimes more than one, jostling for space. And your girlfriend breaks up with you. You are really, really down. You're dejected, you're depressed, you don't want to eat, you have no energy. You wonder whether life is worth living. Then suddenly you get a phone call. It's your girlfriend. She has also been feeling miserable. She wants to know if you would like to get together. And all of a sudden, you are elated. You can climb mountains, you can jump over buildings. Are you with me? Where did that energy come from? What caused that transformation? The answer, of course, is that energy was always there. You were just very good at blocking it. That is an extreme example, but it makes my point. There are pools of energy and creativity and innovation that are always available to you, but you do not tap into it because you have very successfully found good ways to block it. And if you could tap into even a fragment of that, your life would be transformed immeasurably. So, how do you get to what I'm talking about? How do you climb or leapfrog several levels? You can't do it by working harder. In fact, working harder will actually set you back. You can't do it by working smarter. You can't do it by managing your time better. In fact, the only way you're going to be able to pull this off is by radically changing the way you think. You have to ask different questions, dramatically different questions. And what do I mean by radically changing your thinking? I'm going to share several examples of that with you today. Let me tell you a story. Medieval England, site of a great cathedral being constructed, and the architect went to the construction site and he passed three people, all of whom were doing the exact same thing. There was a big block of stone, and they were putting a smaller block of stone on the big block of stone and beating it with a hammer till it broke. And he asked the first person, "What are you doing?" He said, "Can't you see? I'm breaking stones." "Well, why are you doing it?" "I get paid a half a day." And he asked the second person, "Why are you doing it?" And he said, "I'm helping build the wall behind me." And the third person said, "I'm helping build a great cathedral, and when it is done, people are going to be coming from all over the world, and they will be inspired. And I will have had a small role to play in that." And the third person was the only one who recognized the architect, and he said, "Truth be told, I don't like doing it. It's backbreaking labor, and I can get greater wages for less effort. And I'm only doing it because I want to learn. Will you teach me to build a cathedral?" And 20 years from that date, the person who was breaking rocks was dead. He no longer had the strength to break rocks, and he starved. The person who was building the wall behind him was living a life of desperate poverty. But the person who was helping build a cathedral, he was on his way to building his first cathedral. Now, that is pretty much a choice that every one of us has every single day. We can build a cathedral, or we can break rocks. And most of us have a tendency to get stuck in the breaking rocks part of what we do. This requires each one of us to live life simultaneously on two levels, on a 6-inch level and a 50,000-foot level. The 6-inch level is important. The 6-inch level is where you determine, oh my God, which are the emails I'm going to reply to, which are the phone calls I'm going to return, which are the reports that I have to do, what do I have to really, really do on my to-do list for today. The 6-inch level is where the work gets done. But if the 6-inch level is where you spend all your time, your nose is going to get plenty abraded. The 50,000-foot level is where you make sense of it all. What is the meaning of life, my life? Where do I want to go? What is the legacy I want to leave behind? What does it all mean? And you have to simultaneously live on both the 50,000-foot level and the 6-inch level. And it is at the 50,000-foot level that you recognize that you are actually building a cathedral. And the most important cathedral that you will ever build is your fulfilled life. As we go through life, we frequently get frustrated. We get angry. There are people in our lives, and we wish that they would be different. Anybody here have a person in your life who you would wish was different? I see a forest of hands going up. Imagine this. I am a county executive, and you are a civil engineer. Got that? I'm a county executive and you're a civil engineer. I call you to my office and I want to give you a contract to build a road, and it goes from place A to place B. And between place A and place B, there is a forest, a swamp, and a mountain. Do you get angry at the forest, the swamp, and the mountain? You don't, right? That's the terrain that you've been given. Your job as a civil engineer is to get that road built. And you have to figure out, am I going to go over it, under it, or through it? And if it turns out to be a particularly deep swamp or a particularly high mountain, you might think in terms of doubling your fees, but apart from that, has no impact on you. You don't get angry at them, that's the terrain. And your skill as a civil engineer is, how do you get the road built? Correct? In exactly the same manner, the people in your life who you cause yourself grief with. Remember, I didn't say the people cause the grief, I said you cause yourself grief because of the people. They're the forests, the trees, and the swamps. They are who they are. There is nothing you can do about it. Your job is to build the road of your purposeful, meaningful life despite them. Let me share one other major concept with you. And this actually came from one of the greatest unrecognized scientists and geniuses in the world. You've probably heard of him. His name was Albert Einstein. And again, I'm not being frivolous when I say that, because when we think of Albert Einstein as a great scientist, we are primarily thinking of his scientific contributions, the theory of relativity, the discovery of the photoelectric effects, and so on. But Einstein also had a very deep understanding of the universe. He was a philosopher. And the theory of, I was a physics major, by the way, and though I did study the theory of relativity, it did not have a great direct impact on my life. And I'm sure it didn't have such an impact on any of your lives either. But the concept that I'm going to share with you can have a very important direct impact on your life. Because Einstein said the most important question you are ever going to ask is the universe friendly? Let me repeat that. The most important question you're ever going to ask is the universe friendly? Now, we all know that there are some people who believe that the universe is unfriendly. The sole purpose of the universe is to frustrate you. These are the people who believe that whenever you go out to an important appointment, it will engineer a traffic jam, it will crank up the temperature and cause your air conditioner to break down. There are relatively few such persons, and I'm sure there are none in this room. The vast majority of us believe that the universe is not aware of our existence, is indifferent to us. Sometimes it works that the university plays ball with us and things work out well, and sometimes the universe doesn't, and things get unstuck. But by and large, I'm here, I go do my thing, and the universe does its thing, and basically the universe doesn't know I exist. That's where most of us live. But just supposing the universe were friendly. The universe was aware of your existence and was well disposed towards you, and in fact was friendly. Now, if the universe is friendly, nothing would ever happen to you that was bad, right? Do friends shaft friends? They don't. But you have an incomplete understanding and an immature understanding. So think about it as if you were a child, what you really want is a tub of ice cream. And what does a wise parent give you? Fruits and vegetables. You don't want fruits and vegetables. You want a tub of ice cream. But your parents give you fruits and vegetables. And it's only when you've reached a much higher level of understanding that you can say, gee, am I glad I got fruits and vegetables rather than a tub of ice cream, correct? So in exactly the same way, what if the universe was like a fond parent? And it gives you stuff that you don't want to get. But maybe that's exactly what you needed for your learning and growth. If you can accept that, then whatever comes your way is something you can deal with because you say, hey, the universe is a friendly universe and I don't like what it's given me, but obviously there's some learning, growth, something that I need, and it's exactly what I need at this stage, so let me go ahead and start accepting that. Now, I want you to think about something. Regardless of whether or not the universe is friendly, if you believed that the universe was friendly, it would greatly improve your life. Do you recognize that? It doesn't matter whether the universe is friendly or not, just believing that the universe was friendly would greatly improve your life. And what if the universe really were friendly? Then you'd very quickly get to the vision that I laid out for you. Now, the problem is the following. Just because you can intellectually recognize that a model is superior to the one you're using does not necessarily mean that you can adopt it. In order to adopt it, you have to radically change the way you think.